First and foremost, just like introduce yourself to me. Why are you running this year, and where do you fit into the Northern Kalispell Evergreen community?
Well, I'm Lukas Schubert. I'm running for House District 8, and some of my top priorities and why I decided to run was because I think there's a lot that we need to do at the state level, cutting property taxes, dealing with the high cost of housing, dealing with the illegal immigration issue, very large. Even up here, you'd think it wouldn't be, but it is. And the judiciary. That's that. If anything, that's probably the reason why I decided to run. Was because these very corrupt judges are trying to do whatever they want. We've seen it happen to President Trump himself a couple of months ago, where they trying to convict him. And obviously those lawsuits are still going. It's a very similar thing here at the state level. So I think we need to address that. Um, but how I fit into the community, I've personally, I have gone around, probably knocked on almost every door in the district. So I know the district very well. I've been involved in political campaigns over there in 2022 as well. So again, I know people very well, as well as personally, I'm a conservative, and I think Evergreen and Northeast Kalispell is a conservative community. So I think the values match as good as they're going to get.
And you kind of outlined like a lot of the topics that I have questions to ask you about, but starting with property taxes, I know that that's something that a lot of our community, specifically here in the Flathead, have really been struggling with. And also obviously housing, available housing, affordable housing, and all of that good stuff. But for property taxes specifically, do you have any policy plans for how you would prevent them from rising further after this next session?
The governor's task force, they're planning on voting on a homestead exemption that would make first homes as well as long-term rentals have a lower property taxes. And I think that would be beneficial. Also, I think we do need to do something about people getting priced out of property, especially elderly on a fixed income. So solutions to that could be reducing the just simply setting a cap, or saying that there needs to be that it's going to be based off of the original purchase price adjusted for inflation, because that will give people predictability in their taxes. And that's really what it comes down to, is we need to have a predictable property tax system so that people know, okay, maybe it increases a little bit, maybe it decreases a little bit, but that people generally know what they're going to be paying, even if it is a slight increase. And a property tax system that puts lifelong Montanan residents first, because you should not have the same property taxes. Let's say you bought your house for $250,000 and the exact same house next door sells for 600 grand to some out of stater. They should not be paying the same amount of taxes. So we need to put Montanans first, create a simple system, and ensure that people have lower property taxes.
And I'm glad you mentioned the homestead exemption because that's something that I've heard pretty much consistently from everyone, is that that's a good idea. And I know that that bipartisan task force has put a lot of thought and time into developing those policies. But off of that kind of just the bipartisan nature of that, do you think that Democrats would support any solution that came from a Republican? And how do you plan on kind of working across the aisle with some people to make actual policy initiatives happen?
Well, you interviewed the opponent, so I'm sure she'll tell you she'll tell you whatever she's going to respond to. But I think that there are certain things that Democrats might vote with us on. I don't know about the property taxes, because I know that they have their own plan, so they might try to kill the property tax task force plan in order to implement their own. So we'll see what happens. Most bills, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe above 50% of bills end up passing with unanimous support because they're highly technical. They're not large policy changes. They are purely implementing just technical fixes in the code where things just objectively don't work. And so, on those types of bills, of course, there's going to be a bipartisan consensus. And listen, if I would absolutely be willing to work with Democrats if they want to help on some of these issues, property taxes and housing. But I'm not going to cave on my core principles in order to get Democrats to support me on some other thing. We need strong Republicans at the same time, because, in my opinion, what's happening to our state is we are headed down the same path as California and Colorado, of becoming very far left, becoming very liberal. It'll happen sooner than you think. And so it is critical that we have strong Republicans. But yeah, if there's some niche policy that both sides agree on, absolutely, I'd be willing to talk with them. And that's the other thing, is I'm willing to talk with whoever. I put my personal phone number on all my campaign literature. I put my email on there. And so if you want to reach out to me, reach out. I'm willing to talk with anyone. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't mean that I'm going to cave on my core values. Not at all.
And then, like you just mentioned, I know that the judiciary has been, from your whole campaign, that's been a big core principle of kind of why you're running. And what, I guess, like, policy ideas do you have to bring to the legislature to address that or make that better? Like, are you in favor of partisan elections? Just kind of like walk me through your solutions to improving the judiciary.
So to those listening at home, the judiciary is a very serious concern in this state, because what they do is they file as nonpartisan. They take hundreds of thousands of dollars from partisan liberal organizations and special interest groups, and then they rule in favor of them. We can see this where Ingrid Gustafson, candidate for state Supreme Court last election cycle, got over $100,000 in independent expenditures from Planned Parenthood, and she wrote the opinion of the case siding with them where they were in front of her in court. So we absolutely need to deal with the corruption in the judiciary. I think exactly that, allowing judges to file with a party, is a very reasonable solution, because the reality is the First Amendment gives us the right of freedom of association. And so if you're saying you can't file with a party as being a judge, that completely violates that right. So absolutely we need, and it's just a matter of reality. Most people, unless they're insanely political junkies, it's very hard to find information on these judicial races. And so a lot of people just don't know who's liberal, who's conservative. The reality is everyone has a bias. So if we are going to be electing judges, at least let the voters know what that bias is. But on top of that, we can talk about judicial recusal. And frankly, I think some of these guys need to be impeached. There was back in 2021, the legislature subpoenaed these judges, and they themselves, six of the seven, the legislature subpoenaed the Montana Supreme Court over alleged text or emails between them of illegally saying how they would rule on if a certain bill passed, which, like I said, it's illegal. And the legislature subpoenaed them. Six of the seven just said, nope, we're not gonna hand over any documents. And so these guys are just breaking the law, breaking the Constitution. Another case from 2021, the legislature passed 4 election integrity laws, and the Constitution says it's up to the legislature to determine the time, place, manner of elections, as well as ensuring the purity and security of the elections. That's what the state constitution says. And these judges struck down all 4 of these election integrity bills. So they completely ignore the Constitution. They take basically bribes from special interest groups that then appear before them in court. And these guys are very far left. They think, it hasn't gone up to the state Supreme Court yet, but they're probably going to side with striking the law down. A district court has already struck it down, SB 99, that would prevent little kids from getting transgender mutilation, harmful mutilation surgery. And they're in favor of kids getting transgender surgery. So yeah, these judges, we need to deal with it 100%. Those are some of the solutions that I would probably propose. But frankly, anything and everything we can do, we got to do it.
How would partisanship fix maybe the things that you're concerned with of the judiciary? If we did have a partisan election, how do you think that that would end up fixing some of your concerns? Do you think people would vote more Republican? And then also, do you think that Republicans make better judges than Democrats? Would that partisanship kind of make it clearer, do you think, for voters?
I mean, absolutely. Right now on the ballot, it says nonpartisan, nonpartisan. And I believe judges are not even allowed to say, where they really personally stand on a lot of these issues. So if on the ballot, okay, it says Republican and Democrat, okay, this person is going to be generally liberal, generally have Democratic values. This person is going to be conservative, generally have Republican values. It's just more transparent to argue, and you can't really argue otherwise, because in one situation you have two gray candidates, and the other you have one red, one blue. You can see where their bias is going to be, because that's the false reality that these liberal judges like to make you think, is that, oh, well, we need to keep politics out of the courtroom. That doesn't exist in real life. Everyone has a political bias, and to say otherwise is just completely foolish. It might be relatively in the middle, it might be on the left, it might be on the right, but I think the voters generally have the right to know who they're voting for, because getting information on these candidates for people that are not super political is hard. So absolutely, they need to be allowed to file with the party. And you say, is it going to tilt the court more Republican or Democrat? Well, the reality is this state votes Republican. It votes consistently Republican. It voted for Trump by 15, 16 points in 2016, a similar amount in 2020. And I'm a Republican. So, yeah, of course, I think that conservative and Republican judges are going to produce better results than Democrat or liberal judges.
And then I also want to talk about at the end, I'll open it up if there's anything else that you want to say on any of these topics that we're not touching on right now. But also want to touch on immigration with you, because I know that that's another main issue that you've been running on. And in your questionnaire, I know that you mentioned a couple of things, from illegal immigration affecting the housing crunch to maybe seeing Montana take on some policies like Texas. There's a lot of ideas in there. So I would just like you to kind of maybe outline some of your top ones when it comes to dealing with illegal immigration in Montana.
Well, I think, like the judiciary, we need to do everything we can to stop the influx of illegal immigration. Already, we've had a stabbing in Marion, we've had a murder in Bozeman by illegals, and just economically speaking, it's basic supply and demand. If you have tons of people move into a geographic location, well, the housing supply is limited, and so those people moving in are going to take up housing, reduce the supply, increase the price. Same thing with the labor market. You have tons of people moving in. Actually, the inverse, though. You have tons of people moving in. There are a certain number of jobs that companies need. And so when they come in here, they are going to, especially because they're generally from second or third world countries with a very low standard of living, even making $5 an hour is a great step up from their home countries. They move in here, they will lower wages, decrease the amount of jobs available to Americans, and decrease the wages and benefits of those American, even if they are able to get a job, the Americans, that is. So, yeah, it's a huge issue. So I think that we need to provide penalties for businesses that knowingly hire illegals. It's already illegal. And so we need to get serious and say, listen, if you knowingly hire illegals, we are going to fine you. And frankly, I think, especially if it's to a large degree, where your entire workforce is just illegals, and that that's the case. I mean, frankly, these companies need to be shut down, because they are disenfranchising American workers and bringing people in here who are otherwise committing crimes and who shouldn't be here in the first place. So That's one thing. We need to empower local law enforcement as well to enforce some of these laws and ensure that people are not, that these illegals are not getting on government welfare. There should be no welfare to illegals. The only thing that we should pay for them to do is a flight back home. So all of the above. That's really the answer to both the judiciary and the immigration issue. All of the above. We need to do everything we can on these issues, go all out. Um, and in terms of bills that I'm going to carry, I do plan on carrying a bill related to immigration. We'll see. I'm still looking at the exact specifics. E-verify, that's another thing. E-verify, we should have e-verify. But yeah, this is a subject that I am going to be carrying a bill in the next session.
Just out of curiosity, because I was trying to do some research for it. Do you know if there's been any statewide statistics about how much housing immigrants are taking in the state? Like, has there been a study on that at all or anything, to your knowledge?
Well, I can tell you anecdotally, in my district, since I do a lot of door knocking, I've been to a couple apartment complexes, talked to probably 4 or 5 people at these complexes, and don't not a lick of English. So probability is that these people are not here illegally if they can't speak any English. That's just basic math. But there are the estimates of how many of them are here is in the thousands. So even if you want to divide it by 5, let's say, because you hear of stories all the time of where there's 5 or 6 or whatever of these guys in an apartment complex, you want to divide it by 5 or 6, whatever. That's still hundreds of units that are being taken up by illegals. So it is absolutely a concern.
And then I know that you mentioned Texas, and I know that in the past I've talked to people about Iowa also implementing some statewide laws to tackle immigration. Is there like any specific one in Texas that you kind of refer to when you are saying we should take on some of the things that they did?
Well, I think it's a little different because obviously they are on the southern border, where a large amount of these guys were entering the country in the first place. So that them using the National Guard to build the wall, to put up barricades, that's something that and frankly, especially if Trump does get in there, it seems like the southern border is going to be secured. Canada has very open immigration laws, so we could see a situation where these guys go to Canada and then come south into the United States, which would mean that we would be on the front line. So we absolutely need to prepare for that, have the National Guard ready. But also just saying, listen, if you are in the state of Texas, because I believe it got struck down by these courts, but I believe they passed a law saying that if you are illegally in Texas, if you're not supposed to be there, no visa, illegal immigrant, that was grounds for an arrest. So the state of Texas could arrest them for being illegally there. So something like that really is what we need to do, because again, this is a huge issue. The effect on wages, the effect on housing, and the crime are all serious matters.
Also, in your questionnaire, you mentioned that your opponent supports Valley Neighbors, and I know that Valley Neighbors is local and has been kind of thrown into conversation in the past couple of months a few times. And so, do you think that what Valley Neighbors is doing is illegal, and would you ever like specifically target them through the policy or anything? I guess just kind of like where are you standing with that from like that local level?
Well, on their website, maybe they changed it now, but they publicly stated that they help undocumented immigrants. So that means illegal immigrants, that they are helping people that they know should not be in this country. They're helping them stay in this country. I think that is frankly needs to be investigated. I can't say a specific exactly what I think needs to happen, but absolutely it should be investigated. And if you know that someone is here illegally and you are helping them evade the law, frankly, that ought to be a crime. That ought to be criminal. And some of these organizations, again, will look and see, obviously, if there was an investigation, see if they are actually, to what degree that they are doing this. But if they're helping illegals, they need to be shut down 100%.
And then the last question or topic that I really wanted to touch on is just, do you think the public education formula needs to change? I know that your response to that was pretty straightforward in the questionnaire about how we could help budget. But specifically, do you think that that formula needs altering, that 80-20 that's currently existing?
Also, before I move on to that, I just want to say that, because my opponent goes on all these things and says, oh, well, I haven't paid property taxes, so I can't speak on property taxes, so I'll bring up some just on the just on the immigration issue. I'll bring up, something that she said. She says that she does not think that we should kick people who are here illegally out of Montana. So this is a very far left talking point. Again, just like I said, just because that was the previous topic. Yeah. So this is a very serious thing. But on the education issue, we really what it comes down to is that we need to we need to deal with the fact that right now in the state of Montana, the state has basically a monopoly on the education system. And I just don't think that that should be the case. I think with school choice, you have competition, which leads to innovation. So there's a lot of balance that needs to happen because right now, for someone who homeschools or private schools, sends their kid to private school, they pay property taxes to the school district that they're not using, and then they pay extra to educate their child through means that they see fit. Which, by the purpose of education, really, the first teacher is the parents, and I think that is the right thing. I think that the parents need to have a strong say in in the child's education. So, with that in mind, I would probably point to the amount of administrators in the public education system that are getting paid tons of money, and there's lots of these guys in every school district. That might be a place where we can rectify those budgets and increase teacher pay by getting rid of some of these administrators that, frankly, how much do they actually do to teaching the kids?
Well, that is kind of all of the things that I had planned to talk to you about. Is there anything that we didn't touch on or anything that you didn't get the chance to say that you think's integral to either your campaign or you as a person or something that you want voters to take away when they see your name on the ballot in November?
The cost of housing, because property tax and cost of housing are pretty related, but I think specifically addressing the cost of housing is critical, especially in my district where I checked a couple of months ago and there was maybe one or two properties that were trailer parks, so you still have to pay the lot rent, where someone could buy, where a median household income could purchase without overpaying on their monthly payment. Basically, I think everyone already knows this. Housing is unaffordable for regular people. And so we absolutely need to deal with this issue. I think solid solutions would be to reduce the tax burden on producers of property and of housing that actually fits those needs where regular people can buy them. I think that that would be one thing. And frankly, I think that in terms of, we talk about immigration a lot, but we also are dealing with the issue of non-US citizens who don't live in Montana purchasing tons of property, buying up land. And that's something that's limited. Unless they drain Flathead Lake, there's no new land that's coming to Montana. So with that, we need to look and say, listen, should Chinese billionaires be able to buy thousands of acres in this state, which would jack the price up for the rest of us who actually live here and who are actually American citizens? And so, frankly, I think we probably need to put a stop to that. But absolutely, the cost of housing is something that's, even though it's related to property taxes, it is somewhat unique, and there's some things that we need to do.
Sweet, Lucas. You have a great rest of your day. And yeah, feel free to reach out anytime with any questions or anything.